Welcome to Carter's Retro Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing a Johnny Bazookatone for the Saturn. Now, I was thinking, Johnny Bazookatone, the only way that you're going to make this dog shit any better is by calling it Johnny Bazoongatits. And I realise too, now that I've said that I need to also change the Johnny part if I'm going to make Johnny a woman with a nice rack. Because that would just be confusing, although I have seen some stuff come out of Japan that's... could go either way, really. So, I mean, if this was a movie, it would be called Diarrhea Island. The movie would be called Diarrhea Island, just because it's just mound of shit after mound of shit. Hey, if you don't believe me, here's the details. I played this game back in the 90s on a friend's PlayStation. The only thing I remember vividly is him saying he doesn't like it, and it should be obvious to me why it sucks. I don't remember how I felt about the game, which is not always an indication on how bad a game can be. Especially since I can barely remember what I did yesterday. I really need to cut back on my crack habit. So when I got this game in my hot little hands, I had a sense of optimism. Maybe it wasn't as bad as friends said back then. Maybe we were all caught up in the madness of the Final Fantasy series and the Tekken series and the myriad of other quality releases to really give this game a try. So, let's get the facts out of the way. Johnny Bazookatone was developed by Arc Developments and released in all three territories, US, Japan, and PAL for the Saturn. The game was published by US Limited in both the US and PAL regions, except in Japan where it was published by Softvision. It was also released on the PlayStation, 3DO, and PC all in 1996. Some releases came equipped with a music CD based on the game's musical score. Now, before I even play a single frame of the game, I did my usual sleuthing on how reviewers in the past found the game, typically reviews from the 90s, and wow, what a complete divide. Some said this was an enjoyable platforming romp, and others said 300 hours the most boring platforming game ever. If the internet was as popular as it is today, the internet would catch fire from all the sheer hate it would generate. Regardless on how good or bad a game is, the internet seems to be the harshest critic. Okay, granted you didn't have such anti-consumer bullshit like review embargoes and games being released completely unfinished to have them send out a day one patch in a half-assed attempt to fix all the fuck-ups, but if the game is not stellar, boy, will you know about it. I've played games that weren't particularly bad, and the hate they generated was crazy. I can only imagine what self-entitled asshole would be raging about, shouting profanities and comparisons like, would prefer to shove meat up my own anus and then have piranhas toss my salad and leave my bleeding gaping hole I once called a butthole, then have to deal with this game again. So, is it as bad as all of that? I can make a blanket statement about presentation as being bland overall. It's such a shame because this is such a missed opportunity. The game starts out with this intro video, which is a complete misrepresentation of the game. It looks pretty and sounds amazing. The menu presentation seems to have ho-hum colours, which is really fitting to go with the ho-hum colours of the in-game presentation. It does feel 90s, which is a pretty nice nostalgia trip, but if this was an acid trip, I'd be sitting on the floor bored waiting for it to be over. The graphics aren't too bad. If you've noticed a complete washed out look to the game, that's because it has. It's a 2D platformer with no real detail. It's all quite boring to look at, and there are other issues which kinda tie in with the gameplay, and I'll talk about it there. Sound is a clear highlight, one of the best soundtracks I've heard in quite some time. Even the best games I've reviewed seem to leave me with an air of indifference when it comes to sound, apart from the fact that, well, it just fits in with the rest of the game. But if I have only one positive thing to say about this game, it's this. Memorable soundtrack to the point where I would be more than happy to listen to it outside of the game. Very few games I can say about that. Sound effects are fine. I had the pleasure of playing a game called Volga the Viking recently. It's a trial and error platformer. I died 75 times in the first 20 minutes of playing, but what that game did is make it seem all very possible. You died and went, okay, I see what I did wrong. I'll know that for next time, so when I get to this point again, I'll be able to progress. That game reminded me a lot of this game, Trial and Error, but there's a few major differences. The level design in this game is fucking dreadful. I was dying from things no one should, or maybe make it clear that it will kill me. Falling through platforms that look like every other bit of the platform is fucking cheap. I died from thorns up one side of a structure, A guy with a mallet hits the floor and a rock shoots through the air and I'm supposed to ride that to the platform, but if the mallet hits you, you lose life. The enemies are annoying, and while you could argue that they were tactfully placed, they're still really shit to face. Less of a well thought out obstacle and more of an inconvenience you put in place that makes this already difficult situation even harder and taxing on me as the player. And I was taking leaps of faith constantly. And yes, some are where you can shoot towards the ground to slow you down and at the same time kill enemies on the ground, but I became over-reliant on it because I could never see what I was landing on. By the time I'd figured out the best way to approach the situation in the first 3 levels, I retried parts so many times that instead of playing Vulgar where I went, ooh, okay, just one more turn, I can make it this time, I went, nope, fuck this shit. It shouldn't be this difficult to enjoy a game. On top of that, he jumps about 3 centimeters from the ground, making jumping kinda useless. When you jump off the rock onto the platform, he sometimes fails to move because I didn't hit it exactly right. You should still do something even if I didn't get the timing right. It's my prerogative as a player to miss if I didn't get it exactly right. Don't just not do anything and fall off like a piece of shit. Controls can be alright when the flow of the game is right, but again, bad level design means that you'll get to spots that break the flow of the level, and it's here that you'll find the controls to be annoying and not 100% accurate. It's a single player with 5 locations and anywhere between 3 and 6 levels in each location. I failed to see how someone would come back to a game like this. Once you got into the groove, it's still frustrating. You die from cheap bullshit. I got to a point where I don't know how to progress. Normally at this juncture, I would persist, figure it out, and move on. But instead, I put down the controller. I'll never come back to it. I'll come back to it ironically when I have the guys over and they ask me to play the best the Saturn has to offer. In the meantime, I'll always have that question dwindling in the back of my mind. Should I sell it on eBay? Would I recommend this game? I think the answer is obvious. Yes. No, of course not. It really has some glaring issues, too big to ignore, but you know, if you've heard everything I had to say and you're still not 100% convinced, maybe this is the game for you. I love platformers so hardcore, but this was so boring with piss poor level design that I simply can't recommend it.